OUR drew Utah State University into the sham graduation controversy. The Logan-based university got caught with its pants down in connection with its Operation Underground Railroad partnership. USU supported OUR's bogus graduation ceremony after its Huntsman Management School guzzled OUR Kool-Aid. Sketchy details about the sham graduation ceremony were disclosed during a May interview OUR founder Tim Ballard gave to conservative political commentator Glenn Beck. Ballard discussed what he called an amazing rescue that occurred 9 months earlier, somewhere in Latin America. It involved the rescue of 10 adult women from an undisclosed country who were taken to another unnamed country and forced into prostitution. During the Beck interview, Ballard claimed that OUR dramatically rescued the 10 prostitutes from a brothel while the traffickers and the police who traffickers bribed gave chase. By the way, traffickers are what Ballard calls pimps and madams. He claimed that OUR bypassed normal channels to get White House-approved visas to transport the hookers, who Ballard says had been abducted and forced into the sex trade, to the United States, where they were welcomed by then-President Donald Trump. And OUR supposedly took 7 of the 10 women to an unnamed university here in the States to be educated, whereas OUR claims some of them earned university degrees in a matter of months and were graduated. But before I get to the women's purported graduation from the university, I'll explain why it matters. Why does this story, told this year about a rescue the year before, may be the most controversial Ballard has yet told? This rescue involves only adult, not child prostitutes. In the beginning, OUR's focus was on underage sex slaves. White House involvement with the rescue. The use of private jets to bypass airlines to reduce exposure to professed danger. Evacuees brought to the United States to be educated. It's not OUR's usual SOP. Aftercare is usually done in their homeland. An American university is drawn into the scandal to aid and abet the sham graduation ceremony. Ballard tells his story, webcast worldwide, well after the criminal investigation began. Why would anyone risk making false statements while prosecutors are investigating suspected false statements made to solicit donations? Utah has a communications fraud law that makes it illegal for any person to devise a scheme to defraud another or to obtain from another money by means of false or fraudulent representations, promises, or material omissions. But before I get to the women's graduation from an American university, here's what Ballard told Beck about their abduction and then dramatic rescue. The kidnapping story begins with an unnamed woman, a bad person from an unnamed country going into another unnamed country with high unemployment to deceive 10 women there and lure them, transporting them via a commercial airliner to another undisclosed country for work, such as waitressing or modeling.
These were all
Very
professional women, and it was a professional job. This person came into the country where nobody had a job,
Right.
And said, look, I know you have to feed your family, and we have a professional job.
And so these women gave their children to grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles, in some cases husbands, and took off for a 3-month journey to go make some money to save their families. They land, and their passports are taken to process. Some are given drinks, but they all have one thing in common. They wake up in another country where they don't speak the language, one of the most horrific, corrupt countries in the world.
Bad.
And wake up literally naked and raped immediately and told, this is your new life. You will work here and you will be a sex slave in essence. They had these women, Glenn, because our guys were on the ground there and literally in a jail cell behind the brothel, literally bars that lock from the outside. Now, by the way, these women are praying women. They were just praying every night, God, send us anyone, someone, because there's no way out. What can they do? No passport, don't speak the language, no way to communicate with anybody, and they're stuck.
Ballard said his strike team was at a nightclub in the unnamed country to rescue child sex slaves, with local police standing by to arrest pimps, when an adult prostitute slipped them a note claiming to have been abducted. Ballard's operatives decide to rescue them and not any child prostitutes. This photo is from another interview Ballard did about the daring rescue. But the rescue attempt goes badly awry when the police betrayed OUR's strike team and took bribes from the pimps or madams.
That's it. We had no choice.
Right.
So we literally go into this place. The cops are like ready to go, warrant signed. It looks legitimate. They get into the place to get the girls out, and the cops start taking money from the traffickers right in front of our guys. And we get the girls out immediately. We had this plan ready to go in case this happened. Our guys are literally at this point being chased by cops and traffickers, running with these 10 girls from safe house to safe house.
During an interview with right-wing commentator Candace Owens, Ballard showed new video clips of the purported rescue. One of them showed what Ballard claims is a literal jail cell the 10 hookers were kept in. He added more detail, that the women had been drugged with Ambien and woke up being raped by the traffickers and then forced to do sex acts on each other. While the rescue drama was going on in the unnamed country, Tim Ballard and Attorney General Sean Reyes were at OUR's command center in Utah coordinating the rescue and escape, and in real time, asking for prayers. "We need prayers right now," Ballard tweeted. "We were up all night coordinating a mass rescue operation from headquarters, command center. Many rescued. It was very successful. We have hit snags on exfiltrating the survivors out of the country. Please pray now that our aftercare team and operators can get them all home and into permanent safety while remaining safe themselves. ASAP." I reported on Ballard's and Reyes's plea for prayers in August last year. But I did not include quotes from an interview I conducted with a Utahn, a former LDS missionary to Haiti, who assisted with OUR missions. At the time, back then, I could not connect what he told me with what Ballard webcast the night of August 1st. After the plea for support, Ballard went silent. What raid? What happened? Where did it happen? I dropped it and did not report about my interview. Lance Mergens, the former Mormon missionary to Haiti, has since worked there for himself and at least 2 nonprofits, including OUR. Mergens became disenchanted with Tim Ballard, who Mergens thought, engaged in self-promotion, was deluded, and began believing his own lies. He suspected OUR engaged in bribing police. Mergens remained in close contact with one of Ballard's key Haiti operatives, Dimitri Azor, whose life in August 2020, Mergens said, was put in danger by a rescue operation gone awry. How do Dimitri Azor and Mergens fit into the daring rescue story? I showed photos of both Azor and Mergens in that report I published in August last year that included Tim Ballard's meeting with Haiti President Jovenel Moïse, who was assassinated July 7th of this year. Here's a photo of the meeting that shows President Moïse. Former Utah Congresswoman Mia Love was there. Of course, Tim Ballard. And Lance Mergens, who helped translate. The post-meeting photo shows Dimitri Azor. Who is Azor? He comes from a wealthy Haitian family, was baptized Mormon. He attended school with former Haitian President Michel Martelly, who was a rock star before being elected. Azor studied in the United States, has multiple business interests, and he's Tim Ballard's close friend and supports OUR operations in Haiti. In my report last year that shows a madam being arrested, Azor is seen questioning her instead of police, asking her who she bribed to get out of jail. Last summer, Azor in Haiti called Mergens in the United States. That's what I did not report about back then. Azor told Mergens that Ballard called him about a rescue in trouble. "We need to get out of town, to the airport," Ballard told Azor. The OUR team needed a place to hide. They wanted to stay at Azor's house until they could fly out. Some shady characters were with the OUR team. Mergens understood they were child or drug traffickers. Azor ran interference, and the OUR team was liberated. Mergens feared for Azor's life. I spoke with Azor by phone after emailing him a link to the Glenn Beck Ballard interview. He would neither confirm nor deny involvement in helping with that rescue Ballard told Beck about. That 10 Venezuelan women were involved. The bad guy stayed at his house until the rescued sex workers could be snuck out of the country. Azor told me his life could be in danger if he talked to a reporter. He wanted to know if the FBI is involved in the OUR investigation. He said he would talk to the FBI if given protection, but not to reporters who had no means of providing protection. The evacuees were secretly taken to the United States. Tony Robbins provided his private jet to fly them from the Dominican Republic to his home in Florida. The rescued hookers met with Robbins at his mansion. Ballard says Robbins showered them with love and gifts. Ballard says he took the rescued slaves to meet at the White House, no cameras allowed. Glenn Beck says they were greeted by President Trump. After the Florida and Washington, D.C. visits, 7 of the 10 women were taken to an unnamed university in the United States to be educated.
Unbelievable partners on the ground. There's a university that I'm not supposed to name, but that took them in and put them, gave them scholarships. So they've been students. In fact, several of them just graduated.
With that background, we can return to Tim Ballard's claim he gave the rescued women a college education. Glenn Beck asked, "Have they all been reunited? It's a dicey situation." Ballard responded, "Unbelievable partners on the ground. The university that I'm not supposed to name that took them in, put them up, gave them scholarships. They've been students. In fact, 10, several of them, graduated in the United States." During the Glenn Beck interview, Ballard showed video of what appears to be a university graduation ceremony. 7 women are dressed in caps and gowns. There are congratulatory hugs, certificates handed out, speeches given, faces blurred to protect someone on the stand. No indication of what university was involved or where the ceremony was held. All that is secret. So what university was Ballard not supposed to name? It's Utah State University, the institution I said at the beginning has been caught with its pants down after guzzling OUR Kool-Aid. Utah State University trained 7 of the 10 rescued sex workers at a location USU would not divulge, only to say it was somewhere along the Wasatch Front. The school falsely claimed it did not help organize the fake graduation ceremony. In fact, it helped plan and conduct the sham commencement. And it sugarcoated and covered up its involvement by refusing to answer certain questions and restricting access to many key documents. Contrary to what Ballard says, the women were never admitted as students to USU, but participated in a training program run by USU's Huntsman Business School. It's called SEED, which stands for Small Enterprise Education and Development. Student interns are sent to countries like the Dominican Republic and Guatemala. They teach basic business building principles and help them break the poverty cycle. They help underprivileged people, some former prostitutes, learn skills, get funding, and set up micro-businesses. Seed's USU partners are Operation Underground Railroad and Logan's Maloof Foundation. It's a partnership that appears to be strong enough to embolden USU's stonewalling, again consisting of Operation Underground Railroad, the Maloof Foundation, and the Huntsman Business School that's part of Utah State University. The Maloof Foundation is an anti-child sex trafficking subsidiary of a Logan, Utah bedding products retailer. Its director of operations is a former Seed student. The founders are Sam and Casey Maloof. Casey runs the foundation. One of their programs is On Watch, which trains citizens to be on the lookout for abducted kids. Casey Maloof is also on USU's Board of Trustees. The Maloof Foundation makes some of the same unproven, simplistic, often alarmist claims that OUR makes, like one child is sold for sex every 2 minutes. 2 million children live as sex slaves worldwide. Only 1% of sex trafficking victims in the U.S. are ever identified. Hundreds of thousands of children are trafficked each year in the United States.
It's unimaginable that right here in the United States, 250,000 children are forced into commercial sex trafficking. That translates to one child being sold for sex every 2 minutes. How is this possible?
Maloof used Ballard and OUR to hawk bedding in Las Vegas. They make joint anti-child sex trafficking appearances. Maloof partners, OUR and USU, as I said earlier, trained the rescued sex workers. I interviewed Huntsman Business School's Mike Glauser early on, before it was clear USU was the university Ballard would not name. Glauser referred me to Andy Thunnell, who would not do an interview, but sent me a misleading email about his involvement in OUR's fake graduation. During my phone interview, I asked Glauser if he knew about training for some of OUR's rescuees. I don't know anything about that, he said. What we had was a bunch of USU students in virtual mentoring during the COVID year. Some of them did some work with a group in the United States. I haven't been involved. I don't know anything about it. In fact, Glauser had attended OUR's and USU's graduation ceremony, gave a speech, and helped hand out certificates according to records USU later provided. I turned to USU's PR staff for answers. I first spoke with Emily Wheeler and then to her boss, Amanda Dorito. At the beginning, they answered questions, which led to sugarcoating, then stonewalling, and finally brushing off questions altogether. USU Public Relations did give me this statement. Individuals trained by Seed interns do not receive USU credit, are not enrolled at USU, and do not receive a USU degree credential. USU does not have a scholarship program for the individuals who participate as trainees in the Seed program. USU is currently reviewing representations made by OUR regarding the Seed program and will take appropriate action to protect the integrity of the Seed program. Silence followed. The action USU actually took was to impede my efforts to get answers and records. Given USU's two Seed administrators' elusive responses, given USU PR department stonewalling, I requested records that under Utah law are supposed to be public. Under Utah GRAMA, it's open records law. The law requires state institutions to provide records unless they can show a record is private or protected. USU's Legal Affairs Office, which acts as its GRAMA officer, violated provisions of Utah open records law and misapplied others to withhold many, if not most of the records I sought, and to redact, that is black out, key parts of records it did turn over. USU remained loyal to its OUR partnership. It's a partnership that runs deep. For example, the Huntsman Business School magazine did a fluff piece on OUR titled The Business of Saving Lives. It repeated some of OUR's unproven claims, such as, at this very moment, tens of millions of people around the world are being subjected to the unthinkable indignities of human trafficking, which often involves sex trafficking. The student newspaper provided positive press coverage. The university's magazine did an article that stressed the partnership between the Huntsman School of Business, the Malou Foundation, and Operation Underground Railroad. The school officially raised money for OUR. Yet another example, OUR's aftercare director, Jessica Mass, gave what can only be described as an unhinged lecture at the Huntsman Business School. Mass repeated multiple OUR dubious claims. In her speech icebreaker, she told a story about her hair catching on fire.
Picture this. You're going all through this country sweating as if you had just taken a detour to hell because it is that hot. You're going to these different aftercare homes and you're meeting with these survivors and hearing about their dreams and what they want to do. And so you'd been doing that all day long. But that night, you're speaking at a gala for about 1,000 people. You plug in your curling iron while you get in the shower so that the curling iron is ready to go when you get out. So you put the curling iron in your hair, and all of a sudden, you see this small flame. So you pull out your curling iron, and you're like, ah! And your hair is gone.
I'll skip the soundbite where Mass tells about a rescued toddler peeing on her lap. I'll get to the most riveting part of her speech about children being raped as part of a religious ritual and child soldiers trained to murder their parents.
130 victims being held by a religious radical group. There's 130 children, teenagers, girls that were impregnated by their trafficker, and young women being held. And it was in a religious building. And so what would happen is they would hold the kids inside this building, and then they'd have people come in, and you could rape a child while you were in there as part of the religious type of ceremony that they were doing. And if the person decided that they didn't want to be raped, then they had this huge circle in the middle, and they would throw the children into the hole, and they'd have to stay down there for 2 to 3 days until they decided that they would change their behavior. And I remember when I was sitting down with some of the boys, because the boys were trained to be child soldiers. So not only were they being sexually exploited, they were also being taught how to hold a gun when they're 2 years old. Some of the kids that had to murder their parents as they're getting trained, things like this, that they're telling me about these stories. But with these 130, you actually see life transformation. You actually see somebody that was taught how to hold a gun at the age of 2 can actually have a life-transforming experience because of people loving him, that now he has these other dreams. So when society says there's no hope for somebody that has been sexually exploited, has been forced to be a child soldier, has gone through all of these experiences, I say there's always hope.
After talking about children being raped and some killing their parents, Mass turned to the audience and said this: I haven't been through anything like that. Maybe somebody in here has. She really asked the USU audience if they'd ever been raped or trained to kill their parents. Mass did not tell the audience when and where she visited the church that held child sex slaves and child soldiers, so there's no way to fact-check her story. ISIS, during that war, did train child soldiers and did kidnap women and girls, forcing them into sex slavery. But there's no evidence OUR rescued a single child soldier or child rape victim behind enemy lines during the U.S. war against ISIS. Now, about the records regarding the fake graduation USU is withholding and the ones they redacted. To begin with, Utah State University had no certified grandma officer as required by law. It went downhill after that. Here's a redacted document example where the names of the 7 trainees have been blacked out. One of the open records laws USU violated requires that redactions and excluded documents must be adequately described and properly cited. This is the fine print I won't take time to read. Not one of USU's omitted records or redactions complied with the law. It amounts to dozens of violations by itself. USU says the rescued women's lives would be endangered if it revealed where they were trained, but the university never explains how they're in jeopardy. USU redacted certain records based on the women being crime victims, but never identifies the crimes committed against them. As to USU keeping it a secret where the women were trained, would not even disclose the city where the training took place or anything that would hint at it, would not reveal who was saying the prayer. USU explained, USU has redacted information that discloses the location of some programs, events, or trainings because such information would jeopardize the life or safety of some individuals who participated in the private events trainings. There are lots of ways USU could have shown the women it trained are crime victims, like police reports, court records, medical records, news accounts, verified eyewitness statements, corroborated victim affidavits. Assailant confessions happen on occasion, but USU provided nothing. Amanda Dorito, USU spokesperson, insisted that USU only has an informal relationship with OUR. I asked if there was a partnership, as OUR claimed. She told me, we were not involved in the planning of any ceremonies or celebrations to recognize the students, which is not true, according to USU records released July 12th. Take the smoking gun email, for example, from USU's Andy Thunnell to OUR as training began. We plan on holding a graduation for them. We, meaning USU. Here, USU's Thunnell takes the lead in how the fake graduation is staged. He says, when we award the certificates, and then goes on to explain how it goes, and then OUR's mass says, how do you visualize this? Like as standing on stage and hugging them after they get their certificates? OUR itself disclosed where the women have been, as I showed earlier, which means USU was more protective of some information than OUR. Despite USU's and OUR's secrecy about where the training and graduation took place, I found both the city and the exact location. It was at the Well Church in Sandy, Utah. It's non-denominational, evangelical, and has a nonprofit subsidiary, Redemption House, that supports women who are trafficked, enslaved, or kidnapped. Its website has no phone, no email, no address listed, only a button to donate. I found contact information elsewhere, but I got no response to phone calls or emails. Turning now to tracking the path of the 10 rescued prostitutes from the country OUR would not initially name, it's Venezuela, to another country OUR would not disclose, almost certainly the Dominican Republic, and to a third country OUR kept secret. Spoiler alert, it's Haiti. This is an educated guess. They flew from Venezuela to the Dominican Republic. Their likely destination there, the coastal resort town of Boca Chica, a magnet for international sex tourists and a haven for prostitution. A word about Venezuela. It's a country known for beautiful women and beauty contest winners. 7 of them have won Miss Universe titles. But where millions have been fleeing the country's economic collapse and tens of thousands of women turning to survival sex work. A former Miss Venezuela finalist, Catherine Oliveira, immigrated to Mexico where she was able to get work as a model. Unlike perhaps thousands of Venezuelan women who fled to Mexico and engage in the sex trade. She believes some women who say they're forced into prostitution are merely unwilling to take lower-paying jobs. She told CGTN News, "The victims have only themselves to blame. You have other options, but you don't want them because you think this is the easier option. It may sound harsh, but people make their own destinies." The 10 Venezuelans OUR would later rescue likely flew to the Dominican Republic and went from the Santo Domingo airport to the resort town Boca Chica. One of OUR's very first missions was in Boca Chica in 2014. Ballard said he received intel children were being trafficked to tourists. OUR's intel could have come from the nightly news. Boca Chica was a hotbed for sex tourism, straight, gay, adult, child, and a hotbed for reporters covering sex tourism. It's difficult to walk down the street and beach without bumping into a pimp selling kids or into a freelance teenage prostitute. Take a story done by the United Kingdom's Channel 4. No hidden cameras. The news photographer openly videos beach walkers, street walkers. The reporter interviewed pimps who didn't even ask for their faces to be blurred. The station interviewed an underage escort, a mother, who made multiple times the average Dominican Republic wage. Video of OUR's first Boca Chica operation shows a bus carrying pimps, madams, and underage prostitutes being taken to a residence where OUR had set up the sting. Here's a video clip from the operation.
Hay 10 más. 1, 2, 3.
Slate reporter Meg Conley recently reported on her participation to chronicle that Boca Chica mission. Here are some quotes lifted from her story. Ballard and I are both Mormon. He knew my parents from church. I went on a vigilante raid to save kids sold for sex. What we did haunts me now. I'd never heard of Operation Underground Railroad when its founder, Tim Ballard, called me suddenly in the summer of 2014, saying OUR had a child trafficking sting planned for the Dominican Republic, and he wanted me to come along to document it. This is a still shot of her being arrested during the takedown. I was on occasional planning calls with OUR staff. They were mostly as inexperienced as I was. They believed in Ballard too, and were doing their best to bootstrap his vision of salvation. The calls were fervent but flawed. Everybody wanted to save the kids, but no one really knew anything about these kids. We talked mostly about fundraising. The calls never addressed real things children need to be saved from. Ann Gallagher, whom the U.S. State Department called the leading global expert on the international law on human trafficking, said OUR's raid showed an alarming lack of understanding about how sophisticated criminal trafficking networks must be approached and dismantled, and called OUR's operations arrogant, unethical, and illegal. Ballard sent the article to me and called her a bitch. Then he asked me to write a rebuttal. Conley said she made inquiries about the purported victims. She wrote, The OUR video ends with the line, 26 victims liberated, 8 traffickers arrested. After the sting, I asked people on the jump team where the 26 kids were taken. I was given only vague answers. I found out what really happened from a foreign policy report. In 2014, after OUR's first operation in the Dominican Republic, a local organization called the National Council for Children and Adolescents quickly discovered it didn't have the capacity to handle the 26 girls rescued. They were released in less than a week. In the Glenn Beck interview, Ballard says the Venezuelan women did not stay in their destination city, likely Boca Chica, but were drugged and taken to another country where they did not speak the language, and forced into prostitution, which likely means Haiti, where Creole, not Spanish, is spoken. A month after the Beck interview, Ballard revealed new information about the amazing rescue. For one, he said, for the first time, the women were from Venezuela. For another, he showed new video clips. As he told Candace Owens about the rescue of the 10 Venezuelan sex workers, there were short clips that ostensibly show the raid, but they look like video shot at least 4 years earlier in another country. However, he did show for the first time what is purported to be the jail cell the women were held in. Ballard again claimed some of them graduated from the university. We're getting their kids reunited to them now. He said what happened was, because of the corruption, we could not take down the brothel. It's now full up. It's all filled again with Venezuelan girls. So where is the Venezuelan brothel? Likely in the Port-au-Prince suburb, Patienville. A source told me it's near where the Madam arrest took place in the movie Operation Toussaint, near the police station where the suspected Moise assassins are now being held. There's an LDS chapel in the vicinity. The source says it's probably here, near a small park. It's not easy to fact-check Ballard's amazing rescue story. There are scant details to work with. What, though, is likely? What is probable based on what we now know? It's likely one or more was a prostitute before leaving Venezuela and went to the Dominican Republic seeking seasonal work and better pay. It's likely one or more was not kidnapped, but engaged at a minimum in survival sex work, and that one or more was not cut off from family and may have been sending remittances back to Venezuela. But we don't know, at least not yet. Ballard never talking to investigative reporters, and Utah State University's stonewalling slow reporters fact-gathering and fact-checking. I plan to appeal USU's record denials to the State Records Committee, but the appeal could take months. Watch for the next episode in 2 or 3 weeks, one you will not have seen coming.